tabling of the final MTREF. That happened on the 30th of May of this year. Now, how the process works is that when the public participation process is complete, comments have been received, they are processed into another report that accompanies the final MTREF with the final changes. That document too is 700 to 750 pages in extent. But the public never sees that document until it is adopted. It is disseminated to councillors only. And what happened in this year was that that document was provided to councillors, I think, 4 days before council. That means that even councillors would have had exactly 4 days to assimilate the information contained in the most important decision that councillors take in a year, and that is the adoption of the budget, because that regulates everything that happens in the city for the next year. Now, I want to take you first to the contents of what was in the covering report to council of the draft MTREF that was tabled on 27 March. This is what it says about electricity services. The city has applied a tariff increase of 13.8%, based on the bulk purchases tariff increase of 13.8% from Eskom. On the 3rd of October 2018, Nersa granted Eskom a 4.1 increase, which will come into effect in April 2019. Eskom applied for a further 15%, of which 9.41 was granted by Nersa on 7 March 2019. The tariff is subject to change following Nersa's guidelines for municipalities, which has not been communicated. It then goes on to say, registered indigents are granted 100 kilowatt-hour free of charge. However, all properties below threshold will automatically qualify for free basic services. This is what this report said to councillors. This is what this report said to the public. There is nothing about structural changes. There is nothing about seasonal tariff changes. There is nothing that would have alerted a member of the public or even a councillor to the extensive changes that was contained in the tariff structures. And there simply was not time for councillors or the public to go through these massive changes. Now, Madam Chair, this draft MTREF, and I want to highlight that, provided for a total budgeted electricity revenue, and this information is contained in Table 7 of the revenue and expenditure per vote information. It provides for a total budgeted electricity revenue of 13,979,977,794 rands. It provides for total budgeted electricity expenditure of 10,992,517,810 rand. I want everyone to keep those figures in mind. When the public participation process was completed, as I said, the final MTREF was given to councillors 4 days in advance. It went only to councillors. They had those 4 days to prepare for their council meetings, to caucus about it, and then to proceed to approve it. Again, it was a document of about 700 pages. The covering report again deals with electricity services. And that is what the covering report says in the final version. The National Energy Regulator of South Africa, Nersa, published the municipal tariff guideline increases of 13.07%. The city has budgeted for a revenue increase of 12%. Registered indigents are granted 100 kilowatt hours free of charge. However, all properties below threshold will automatically qualify for free basic services. Again, at this stage, where only councillors had access to this document, there is not a word of the structural changes. There is no warning of what was coming. Nobody knew. And in particular, nobody was alerted to the fact that between the draft tariff structure that was proposed, the amount that went out to public participation was increased from 56 Rand to 200 Rand for domestic, and what the consequences of that change would be. The final budget was then approved on the 30th of May. During June, the city then sent their first proposal or their first request for approval to Nersa, according to the information that I have. And in that proposal or that request for approval, they again changed the figure from 200 Rand to 120 Rand for domestic as a fixed charge. There was no authority from council to make that change at that stage. Council had approved 200, even though that what went out to public participation was 56. Also evident from the covering report on the final MTREF, this time contained in Table 6, again the revenue and expenditure per vote. It appears on page 18 of that report. Total budgeted electricity revenue, the city expects to receive 13,963,835,129 Rand. Its total budgeted electricity expenditure is 11,137,452 Rand. Now, it is at this point, Madam Chair, that I need to take this book. It is called the Municipal Finance and Accounting Second Edition. It is the standard work that is used to lecture to students, and it is a standard desk reference on any municipal employee who works with finances right through South Africa. This is the second edition of this book. The author is well known to us. Her name is Marelise Fourie. She was, before she became the MMC for Finance, an esteemed lecturer at the University of Johannesburg, teaching municipal employees municipal finance and accounting. It is necessary for us to refer to what she says about electricity tariffs and how she applies it, and how this government, of which she's an MMC, applies it. This is what she says. The municipality should, as far as circumstances reasonably permit, ensure that tariffs levied in respect of the water and electricity services generate an operating surplus each financial year of 10% or such lesser percentage as the council of the municipality may determine at the time that the annual operating budget is approved. The modesty of such surplus shall prevent the service tariffs concerned from being viewed as a concealed tax. This is from Municipal Finance and Accounting, second edition, 2011. The words of MMC Marelise Fourie, Chapter 2, page 182. Now, Madam Chair, what is the profit margin that the city makes on electricity? The difference between budgeted income and expected expenditure is 26.8%, according to their budget. Not 10% or such lesser amount. The city insists, and they apply to Nersa for 26.8% profit margin on their electricity revenue. This is shocking. This is an overreach. This is a breach too far. We are the people who must pay this. And the people out there are struggling to come by, while they insist on 26.8%. And I must emphasize on this point that that is the profit the city makes after technical losses, after non-technical losses. The non-technical losses, according to the latest Auditor General's report, is just over 20%. This means that of the tariff that the city is insisting on, 46% is not being applied to electricity. 20% goes to cure the consequences of inept government, and 26% is profit that is applied in other fields. Now, Madam Chair, there's a very good reason why the MMC in her book refers to the modesty of such surplus shall prevent the service tariffs concerned from being viewed as concealed taxes. Our Constitution allows the a municipality to be funded from three sources. It is entitled to raise property rates, which is a tax. It is entitled to raise a service charge on services, which is a tariff. And then it is entitled to raise what's the word, not a surplus?
Surcharge.
A surcharge on their tariffs. But they are not entitled to raise another tax other than property rates. And once you exceed the absolute necessary income from your service tariffs, it becomes a tax. There is jurisprudence, case law to that effect, and it would mean that then the Municipal Fiscal Powers Act comes into being, or is called into action, and the city must apply to the Minister of Finance for approval of this tax. So just again, that is the profit the municipality makes according to its own final budget. If this full application for 13.07 is refused, the city will still make 13% profit, which is still above the lowest threshold that the MMC for Finance in her book says is the minimum, or at least the maximum profit to make. Now, who does this affect? And there are three classes of people that are affected by the structural changes and by the seasonal changes that are introduced. They are the poor, there are low energy users, and there are consumers connected to the city's rural network. We have, in the time available to us, done some modeling based on the tariff structures. You will see there is the 2018-19 tariff, is the winter and summer tariff. There is the winter-summer tariff broken down at a 10% higher consumption over winter, and then there's the winter-summertime consumption broken up on a 20% increase in consumption. The reason why we've done that is because we have requested repeatedly information on how the city modeled its tariffs. And there was just simply no information coming forth. So we made some assumptions here. You will see here that domestic effect of the network connection levy from 100 to 500 kilowatt hours. And the city has said that the lower consumption and the most individuals lie somewhere at the 400 kilowatt hours level. Now, if at 400 kilowatt hours, sorry, it's a bit small here, the increases, as you can see, sorry, let me rather do it graphically here. There you will see graphically, oops, just one moment.
We've got 3 minutes, we've got the presentation.
Yes.
Yes. If you can, the panel members have the presentation.
Yes.
If you can try to
Okay.
go through it. We've got 2 minutes to wrap up your presentation.
The points I'm trying to make here is that in all scenarios, the people who are worst affected are the low power users and the agriculturally connected persons. And the last slide that I have here is to show the effect where there is a different charge, a circuit breaker charge, that resolves all these issues. With a little bit of thought, if the city had implemented a circuit breaker charge instead of a fixed network connection charge, then the graphs will turn around the other way, and the low-cost users will not be badly affected as it is with a fixed initial charge. But that expects a little bit of foresight and a little bit of modeling, which was evidently not done in these cases. Thank you. Yeah. This last graph shows what happens when instead of a fixed charge, you introduce a network, a circuit breaker charge. It turns it around from this kind of a figure, which is the agricultural farmland. There you see once again what happens in the low energy users. They are the people who pay most, while the people who use more of the energy are the people who are least affected. But in all cases, the point of the point of this is that you will see in farmland, even the best scenario at 1,400 kilowatt hours ends on a 20% at a 23.4% increase in the average consumption, or tariff increase effectively at that point. Obviously at 1,000 it is 27.81. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Middleback, for your presentation and for the suggestions on how the city could ameliorate the impact on consumers if they'd done a number of scenarios and running some models so that they can see what options could impact less on consumers. Mr. Sibanda may have questions for clarification.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Just for clarity, so you mentioned the fact that when the city went out to consult, they actually there was an approval of the fixed charge of 200 rand, if I heard you correctly. Now, are you suggesting that what the city has implemented is not what was approved by council? One.
Take the questions down, sir.
Yes. Okay.
And then secondly, obviously, whilst we're dealing with this with the tariff issue, I think the process leading to that is also quite important, as you have indicated, the inadequacy of the public consultation. Now, what in your view should happen with the public consultation process to satisfy consumers out there that there has been adequate consultation? What do you think the city should be doing to improve on its public consultation process going forward? Yeah, and then lastly, I just want to get your understanding of the this new seasonal charge that has been introduced. What is your view on that? If you can just give us your feel on that one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just one question from me, and it relates to the consultations. You made an emphasis that what the city consulted on was not anything relating to the structural changes made in the tariffs. No one was aware of it. It was not part of what they engaged the stakeholders or members of the public or its customers on. What I'm then suggesting, if you say that it is not something that was put out there, nobody knows about it, that there was going to be restructuring, what is your suggestion for Nersa as a regulator now sitting here with an application that contains something that did not, that was not put forward for stakeholders to comment on, for information that they needed on something that was going to impact on them? What is your suggestion on Nersa as to how we should treat that? Yeah, I think that would be that question alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first question was about the sequence of the approvals and what was finally approved and on what date. The procedure went as follows. 27 March, the draft MPREF was made or tabled for public participation. 30 May, the final budget was approved by Council. After 30 May, a submission was made by the City of Tshwane to Nersa, which contained a request for approval of tariffs which was not in accordance with what was approved on the 30th of May. Following the approval on the 30th of May, the first news reports or media reports came out about an 80% rates increases, and people sat up and they started taking notice. I understand that the government of the day appointed a committee and that they recommended revised tariffs on the 27th of June, which was accepted by Council on the 27th of June in terms of a revised tariff report, which I don't have in my possession. And on the 28th of June at the national meeting, I'm not sure that it is the same because I haven't seen them, new tariffs were then presented during the meeting which led to this hearing and the postponement of the matter. What was presented during June, after the May adoption of the budget and tariffs, was not strictly in accordance with what was adopted. Right. I haven't seen and compared the council adopted motion of the 27th and what was submitted on the 28th. I accept that what is now before us and the documents that I received a day and a half ago that we used as the basis for these calculations is what was given to National on the 28th. So that was the sequence, and that is the disjunct between the various steps that took place. I must add at this stage that it is our view that in terms of the MFMA, the budget, and it's quite clear there, must be approved together with all its tariffs at the same time. You cannot approve a budget and then at the next meeting approve tariffs. You can do it all together. If you then change your tariffs, you need to change, or you need to pass an adjustments budget. These changed tariffs means less or more income that needs to be reflected in your budget. It changes what you can do with the money and what money is available for it. That's all in the MFMA. Our position is that what happened on the 27th of June was by definition, in terms of the MFMA, an illegal act by itself. So that what is now before NASA, is also an illegal act. Does that answer the first question? It's fine.
Yeah, thank you.
The second question was public consultations. What, if I remember the question correctly, the question was, what should and how should these public consultations have been done to accomplish their objective? First of all, Madam Chair, you cannot go into a public consultation process by misleading the public about what the essence of the changes and the essence of your proposals are. The very first step of any public participation process is that you honestly declare what the changes are that you are seeking to introduce and seeking their comment on and seeking their approval of. If you go into that process and you misstate the very essence of what this is about, then you are not busy with a public participation process. You're busy with a public deception process, and that is what happened here. They always knew that this was going to be controversial. It was always an attempt to avoid the public from getting to know what is happening here. Because you see, Madam Chair, when a report goes to Council, it is signed off by various people. That report that's served on the 27th of May, and the report that's served in the 30th of May, the 27th of March and 30th of May, were signed off by the Mayor, by the MMC for Finance, by the City Manager, and by various divisional heads and other MMCs. For instance, I would expect that the MMC for utility services would also have signed off on it. That report would contain exactly what they wanted to contain. And that report would not contain exactly what they don't want to be in that report. There are too many signatures on that report for the misstatements that is contained therein to have been a coincidence. This was an attempt to avoid a controversy that bit them in the back.
Yes, the last question?
Now, the third question was seasonal, my opinion, or our opinion about the seasonal.
Yeah, the seasonal, and then you can, if you can be brief and touch on the last question. Sir. Yes.
As far as the seasonal the tariffs is concerned, we don't see a problem with that. It has a purpose, and as long as the structuring between seasonal tariffs is done properly, then it remains under control. But that requires proper modeling. It requires proper working data or modeling data to use. And evidently, from what I have heard about what the city has done, there's not been any modeling, there's not been any working data involved in this. Nobody looked at what the effects would be. Otherwise, we wouldn't end up with tariff increases for a certain category from 40 to 23%, depending on how much you're using. The fourth question, Madam Chair, if you can just restate it to me, because I don't think I can make much sense. Yes.
The question is, what is your suggestion to Nersa on this application that contains restructuring of tariff, of which you indicated it was never part of the consultations that the city embarked on with its customers. The documents that were tabled only contained financial information and budgeting, but it did not contain these proposed tariff structures and all these changes. So I'm saying, with that, what would you suggest Nersa do with an application that contains something that the public was not aware of or that the public was not consulted on?
Madam Chair, yes. The answer to that is not very difficult. If it did not go through the legal processes which it was required to go through, then the process is fatally flawed. As I have pointed out, there is sufficient profit for the municipality in the existing tariffs for it to be disallowed without electricity tariff as a tariff becoming unfeasible or unprofitable for the municipality. The fact that it might, because they're using that income for other purposes, that it might affect their other business should not be Nersa's concern. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Middleburg, for the presentation and for your time and the suggestions that you have put forward. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on to the next presenter, and presenters must remember that you have 20 minutes for your presentation. 10 minutes is for your presentation. Please stick to that so that we can get the other 10 minutes for questions as well as answers. So the next presenter is AfriForum. We've got Mr. Mornay Morstedt. Mr. Morstedt, may you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly declare that the facts you're going to provide before this panel today will be the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please state your name and your designation at AfriForum for the record.
My name is Mornay Morstedt. I'm the head of local government at AfriForum.
All right, please proceed with your presentation, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just first off, AfriForum is a civil rights organization for the promotion of constitutional rights. We tackle different types of issues regarding service delivery, especially in electricity tariffs or electricity as well. It's important to take note that we have over 45,000 members within the Tshwane municipal area, and we have 12 active branch members. Our branches are actively taking part in different cases of municipal service delivery and taking part in different municipal processes. Sorry, Madam Chair, I'll continue. We started our discussion off by just stating a very important part of the electricity tariff or licensing process, which is that the City of Tshwane, the city is a licensee, a holder of a distribution license, and it's very important that part of the license activities of a licensee is actually committing to the license conditions. And there is a very important part where the City of Tshwane can only apply tariffs as approved by Nersa as part of the licensed activities of a licensee. And it's important that we state categorically that in terms of AfriForum's viewpoints is that the city has decided to implement a tariff without the necessary approval from Nersa, which makes the implementation of such tariff illegal and unlawful. And it's very important for us to state that even in the process where we are determining the new tariff to be approved by Nersa. Furthermore, AfriForum started to investigate the tariff structure from the city of Tshwane and the structural changes that would happen. And it can be summarized, and I think a lot of the facts has been mentioned already today. But first off, there was changes in how the blocks are being calculated. Where there were 4 blocks, it was brought down to only 2 blocks. Secondly, the implementation of the seasonal tariffs was being as a structural change. And furthermore, it was important that the different stages, the fixed basic tariff was communicated with different community stakeholders. First off, the publication in the provincial gazette regarding the tariffs of the city of Tshwane was published on the 19th of June 2019. Secondly, there was 3 different tariffs that was processed by the city of Tshwane. The first one had a basic charge of 200 Rand as it was published within the provincial gazette. Secondly was the one with the 120 Rand base charge. This AfriForum got with regards to a prior application that was handed in at Nersa on the 26th of June. And lastly, the council meeting that Lex Middelburg also spoke about that was declared at the council meeting the 27th of June 2019. It is important to take note that VAT is also going to be applied in all of our calculations and modeling that we have done for this presentation and forward, but it's not only 65 Rand because VAT is still going to be applied at these different amounts. When a licensee needs to implement a tariff higher than the tariff guideline as set out by Nersa, there must be a substantiated on how they want to do it. There needs to be motivation or motivated on how and why certain costs are being changed and certain costs are going to be implemented or handed over to the consumer. And if you look at the specific tariffs, you need to have all the relevant information in front of you. It's very important that different stakeholders cannot do modeling if you don't have all relevant facts in front of you. What are the facts? And Nersa has already alluded this morning. You need to have the cost of supply document that gives you all the relevant information on how the city is going to, what the city needs to actually give electricity in terms of its license. Furthermore, you need to know what the amount of losses are within the city. And you need to know what the amount of electricity sold are. All this information and any other relevant information, let's say if there is cable theft and you want to work that within the tariff, all these additional information you need as a stakeholder to be able to formally and adequately take part in a public participation process. These are information that you need to obtain to actually be adequately able to take part in the public participation of not only the City of Tshwane's IDP process, but furthermore any process that is implemented by Nersa. And a further problem is that the Nersa increased tariff guideline is not a set, it's not a target to be held. Every municipality must substantiate how and why they want to implement the tariff increase and what the tariff increase is for. Up to this stage, there was no public forum where this explanation was given to different stakeholders, for stakeholders to be able to apply their minds and actually give feedback to the City of Tshwane or to Nersa. In 2 very specific events that bar the evidentiary burden to actually apply for a higher increase, there's 2 spaces where you need to have a higher evidentiary burden to get for Nersa to approve your tariff. The first one is a percentage higher than the tariff guideline, and the second one is when there is a restructuring of your tariff. At this stage, we feel that the city has not complied with this evidentiary burden for the restructuring of the tariff. One of the most important questions is that we need to ensure that any tariff structure is pro-poor. Now, this is only one part of the modeling that we have done, but I think it speaks 1,000 words, where if you look at the percentage tariff increase for a user using 100 units of electricity, and you look at the percentage increase that person is going to pay, with the winter tariff for a person using only 100, it would be a 68 or 69% tariff increase. This means that the poor, is going to pay more per unit of electricity than the other users. And in the outset, we must actually enable the poor to actually commit and to actually have their situation bettered, not actually tax them more. And this is a very important part. Is this tariff structure pro-poor? And AfriForum says it is not. So in summary, if you look at the tariff increase, everyone only looks at the 12% or 30%, but one must understand that it's not only the 13.1%. You need to look at the additional basic fixed costs, which actually impacts the consumer, and you must also put VAT on that amount. So it's not only 13.1, the percentage of impact on the different consumer is going to be much more than only the 13.07% that the City of Tshwane is contending. It is just important to note that we have received reports of some of the prepaid units not only applying the basic monthly installment once a month, but that it is applied each time the user is buying electricity on that device. We have been in discussions with the city in this regard, and they have contended that they will credit the user that has been, that the meter wasn't working correctly, or that the system has not correctly applied the tariff. In summary, the tariff suggested by the City of Tshwane will have an adverse impact on the residents of the city, and the municipal, furthermore, the restructuring has not been explained or motivated to the different stakeholders within the city to such an amount that it proves the evidentiary burden for Nersa to actually approve such a tariff. And furthermore, the application of this tariff comes in at a time where the block is going to be at the highest. So electricity users will be surprised at the tariff that's going to be implemented on them, because it's the because of the winter tariff is the highest tariff to be applied. But taking this all into account, AfriForum says that there's only one appropriate remedy for the City of Tshwane to be implemented during this time, and dealing with the procedural and substantive flaws that the application has. That is that the tariff and the tariff structure, as it was implemented in 2018-2019, be applied with the due regard that the city can request Nersa for still a percentage increase on the on the tariff structure. This will ensure that residents of the city know exactly how they will be billed for the electricity usage. The city is given reasonable time to complete and reasonable time to be able to give feedback on how they want to implement the new tariff structure as they sort. And all relevant stakeholders will be then given enough time to actually critique and research how this tariff would implement and impact the residents within the city. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mostert, for the presentation. I will ask Mr. Sibanda to ask any questions of clarity. If you have a piece of paper and a pen, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just two questions from me. Firstly, what is your response to the view by the city that it actually complied with its primary legislation, the MFMA, by implementing a tariff that was approved by council, even though it was not approved by the regulator? And then secondly, have you done any work to substantiate your view that the way that the tariff is structured actually results in an increase that is above the Nersa guideline, because that would be a serious concern for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to understand the AfriForum's view on the point that was mentioned by the city of Tshwane earlier on, when they said, well, they have implemented the new tariffs, but on a limited basis, just in respect of prepaid, not conventional. Do you think that is the justification, or something like that is excusable? That the public should not be concerned about that because they just did it for prepaid. And since you were talking about compliance with the Nersa, with the Electricity Regulations Act, do you think that kind of reaction or response is excusable if one considers Section 14, which deals with conditions of license, with what the city has indicated? We just want to understand that. And then I just want to understand whether whether AfriForum is in favor of the proposed structures, such as the seasonal tariffs, basic charges, the fixed charges, and what alternatives would AfriForum suggest under the circumstances. And I would like also AfriForum to think on a practical basis, given that the city also indicated that it was required to implement a new tariff, given the increased cost, some of the cost that they absorb from its supplier, which is Eskom, what they've indicated, where they said they needed to align. What is your view on that? Do you think that they should have done something else, or how do they make sure that they will charge a tariff that will still enable the municipality to cover the cost of the bulk supply from Eskom? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the first question, it is our AfriForum's opinion that the city has not complied with the legislation, and it's going to come up in one of the later questions as well. But it is important that the regulator cannot be sidelined because they need to be, because of the process of the MFMA. The regulator is still there to handle as a safeguard that the electricity tariffs cannot be abused onto the municipality, which is a state organ and the state power. And there is a regulator to regulate it. So that we believe that is a very large transgression. And the past week I've been in lots of media interviews and media debates online. And it would seem to me, especially if you go look at one of the interviews on 702, that Alwaltel believes that they are the executive council of the municipality, and they have due power to apply it as they seem fit. This is contrary to what I believe how the structure is made, and contrary, I think, to the whole spirit of there being in the National Energy Regulator to assist different stakeholders and to give information to different stakeholders to be applied. With regards to the tariff structure, especially with regards to the seasonal tariff structure, usually when you work out your tariff structure in terms of your cost of study document, you would budget for the different amounts to be paid to Eskom during the winter months and not during the winter season and during the summer season. Usually, this is the responsibility of the municipality for different reasons, but just if you take it basically back to ground level on what the impact of it is, we all get salaries on a monthly basis. But now this will mean, because of the seasonal tariff, that you don't get extra money in the winter time, but now you need to budget in the winter time for the extra tariffs. So usually it was the responsibility of the municipality to say, listen, we are going to keep the tariffs single throughout the year, so everybody knows what they need to budget. That's one of the structural impacts that I think it can have. I do believe that you cannot have a tariff structure without the first 100 units being levied quite as expensive as the rest of the tariff. The reason for that is to make sure that you have a tariff that is pro-poor and to assist residents that cannot pay this tariff. It's very important also to note, yes, there is a place for indigents within the tariff structure, but if you fall without just out of the tariff structure with the structure that is being proposed to Nersa, those residents are going to pay the hefty fines or pay the worst for the electricity tariff. Having due regard to that the tariff has already been implemented, I once again feel this is not the way that the leadership should speak when they speak on public forums. And I think they should appreciate the work being done at Nersa to give spaces like this for different stakeholders to take part and have public participation processes. Yes, so once again, I just want to say I've answered the first four questions. Practical basis. What should have been done? If I was in the position of the city of Tshwane, the local municipality, given due regard of the late decision making with regards to the budget, I do think that there was, especially the administration was in a very difficult position on how they should be, how should they conduct themselves. My opinion is that on an urgent basis, I think they should have applied the previous tariff structure that was already approved by Nersa for the 2018 and 2019. And I would, as an urgent matter, I would go to Nersa and say, can we, as maybe not a final decision, but can maybe implement a short-term percentage increase on that tariffs until the final decision is being made by Nersa. This will secure that revenue will come into the municipality for them to pay their respective obligations, and I think this would be a proper way also to send a message to its stakeholders that we are acting responsibly.
Okay, let me just understand the last point. Were you suggesting that with the tariff structures that were in place last year, as approved by Nersa, that the municipality should have increased by 13.7% as approved by Nersa across the board?
I would have asked that the tariff still be implemented as the previous year, but on an urgent basis I would go to Nersa and say, we are in this situation where there is no final decision from Nersa from us to implement. Can we, in the time up until Nersa makes its final determination, apply a 13.0% tariff increase on last year's tariff?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your input and for the presentation. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. We are going to have a presentation from the Electricity Resellers Association of South Africa, ERASA, and we have the name of Byron Taylor. Mr. Taylor, in the meantime, may I conduct Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly declare that the facts you are going to present before this panel today will be the truth and the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. Please state your name and your designation at Nersa for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say before I do that, I may require to call on our Vice Chairman during the questioning phase if I find that the questions are too technical for me to answer, but hopefully I will be okay with it.
All right. Please proceed to indicate your name so that we know exactly who made that comment to ask the Vice Chairperson when we listen to the record.
My name is Byron Taylor, and I'm the Chairman of the Electricity Resellers Association of South Africa.
Thank you, sir. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to give a quick overview. Hopefully I'll be able to do it a little bit quicker and not go into too much detail. A lot of important things have already been said today. I'm going to give an outline of who we are as Nersa, some basic principles of electricity reselling, the historic engagement that the resellers have had with the city of Tshwane, and then the nitty-gritty of this Tshwane application, which contains the structural changes, as well as our attempts to engage with the city regarding these new structural changes. I'm going to give an overview, and then lastly, our suggested way forward. Right, so Nersa is a non-profit association representing the interests of the electricity resellers and their customers. Nersa members in Tshwane supply area have in excess of 150,000 customers. That is domestic and non-domestic customers. It functions as a voluntary governing body of electricity resellers within the jurisdiction of the various licensed supply authorities. Nersa aims to hold and enforce its constitution and code of conduct and or any legislation that is an act, regulation or standard applicable to the members of the association. We also aim to establish and maintain relationships with other associations or legislators within the energy sector of South Africa and to cooperate with them on a national, provincial or regional level. Some examples of those are NAMA, the National Association of Managing Agents, SAPOA, the South African Property Owners Association, and then obviously the various licensed supply authorities, including Eskom. It's important to note that Nersa is not limited to the businesses of operating as resellers, but includes metering service providers who act on behalf of sectional title complexes and homeowners associations, where these entities are responsible for the bulk account, and they are by definition the reseller. I'm just going to add there that in Tshwane's case, Tshwane no longer allow a middleman to sign on for a bulk electricity account. So that Tshwane actually insists that the owner of the property, albeit a homeowners association or body corporate, sign on for that account directly. So by definition, these entities are the reseller. Nersa previously made presentations at Nersa public hearings on electricity reselling, and I'm sure these are still on record somewhere. I have there the code of conduct for the electricity resellers. I don't think it's necessary to go into it at this stage given the time constraints, but what I can tell you is that the members agree to abide by the municipality's bylaws, regulations, as well as those of Nersa, and other applicable acts like the Consumer Protection Act and so on and so forth. All right, basic principles of electricity reselling. Obviously, if you're reselling, you're buying and then you are selling. So if we deal firstly with the selling portion, that is the resell to the end customer. That tariff is determined by the Electricity Act itself. I think most of us should work. All right, as you can see, this is government gazetted, and that is contained in section 2.10 down here. All right, 2.10.10, it's at the bottom there. Let me lift it a little bit. The tariff or price charged by the reseller to customers does not exceed the tariff or price that would have been charged to such customers for the electricity if it had been purchased from the holder of a distribution license for the area in which the electricity is supplied. So basically, and there was a question in this regard earlier, the reseller is bound by law to charge the end client the same tariff as what the end client would have been charged if he was provided with his electricity by the licensed authority, in this case Tshwane, directly. So that is the one part, which is the sell part to the end customer. And if we look at the buying part, Nersa have, I think they published it in around about 2016, the guidelines on electricity reselling in South Africa. Section 8 of that guideline deals with tariff principles, and it is very clear there. It says, where a licensed authority has offered a reseller a bulk tariff, this is a price at which the licensed authority is contracted with the reseller. That tariff should enable the reseller to charge a tariff to its end customer that will mirror the tariff of end customers supplied by the licensed authority. A bulk tariff should mean that a reseller is able to make a profit when reselling electricity to its end customers at a tariff similar to the tariff that the licensed authority charges to its end customers. All right, so I think that is very clear. Basically, what it means is that a bulk discount must be applied to the bulk tariff that enables the reseller to make a profit and operate a business. Again, cost of supply comes into this and so on and so forth. We need to see cost of supply studies. What is that last mile? What does it cost to deliver that last mile for the city? All right, then I'm just going to outline the historic interaction that Nersa have had with Tshwane. It has been relatively close over the last 20 odd years.
Try not to eat too much on your time, because the background here, you've got at least 8 minutes.
I will do that, Madam Chair. All right, so this basically just outlines that we have had a good interaction with Tshwane over the years. Most recently with Philip Savada at Tshwane, we sat down with them twice a year and consulted, and we've managed to achieve some significant tariff structures, changes that were mutually beneficial and within the guidelines of allowed regulation over the years. Right, then the current Tshwane electricity tariff application with its structural changes. As far as the fixed basic charge is concerned, we understand the reasoning behind it, with embedded energy gaining momentum, but there are practical problems in implementing basic charges. One of these is, as we are seeing now when it comes to prepaid electricity. Of important note here is that the average kilowatt hour consumption of a reseller is 450 kilowatt hours a month, which is quite a bit less than the city's average consumer for domestic. This needs to be taken into consideration. The seasonal tariffs, we understand the seasonal tariffs. We understand that higher increases during winter months drives consumer behavior, and also that Eskom is charging the city on seasonal tariffs. All right, the bulk domestic. This is the problem, and this is the biggest issue that we have as resellers. Firstly, the fixed charge. Madam Chair mentioned it earlier, this bulk domestic fixed charge has gone up by 402% without proper justification for that. And then, more importantly for us, for the first time, the city have introduced KVA for bulk domestic consumers. All right, and we are dead set against this, and we're certainly not consulted in it, and it impacts on us very negatively. I'm going to give 2 slides here quickly. The first one is taken from an actual building. It's called Boeing Park out in Erasmus Rand there. There's 190 consumers in this building. All right. Now you can clearly see this is the consumption profile for the whole building. You can see that it starts to climb up at 5 o'clock in the morning when people get up, take showers, dry their hair and so on and so forth, and then they go off to work during the day. It drops down and remains reasonably consistent at that level of KVA, and then it climbs sharply at 5 o'clock. When everybody comes home, they start to bath, shower, feed the kids and so on and so forth, put the lights on, put the TVs on, and then that peak climbs to over 200. It reaches about 210 kVA for this building at about 7:30, and then it drops off during the evening again. So we feel that applying KVA on a bulk domestic supply is punitive to the building. There should never be any KVA applied to domestic consumers, because they are bound by their own behavioral patterns. They are the working class. They are 9-to-5 workers. They are forced to follow a very specific pattern. Right, then I'm just going to bring up the spreadsheet. And this spreadsheet indicates, it's taken from the same building. It consists of 190 units. You can see there, there's 190 units in this building, and right at the bottom there is the profit. If you can see in that over there, this building runs at a loss of 21,000 Rand in 1 month. Given the KVA there, if you could see the KVA is 247 we put in there. If I put in the 210 that I just referred to, it has a slight impact. It means that the building runs at a 14,000 Rand loss. The KVA percentage here is about 35%, which is normal for a domestic block. But some of these blocks have worse load factors. Some of them have better load factors. We see, for example, at retirement centers, they have better load factors. Student accommodations have better load factors. But typically, as the one I showed you earlier, it has a bad load factor, and some of them have even worse load factors, going up to 50%. All right, and if we punch in the figures per kilowatt hour, for example, 170 in winter or 152 in summer, you'll see that the purchase price for electricity on this building would be, given the tariffs that we are given, the purchase price per kilowatt hour would be R2.16. All right, whereas the sale price would be R1.94. So this building for 1 month makes a loss of 14,000 Rand. All right. So that is significant, and this is just an example of what would happen typically with every building where KVA is applied on the bulk supply point. All right. Then, just to repeat, we have tried to engage with Tshwane regarding these tariffs. We've sent emails to the MMC for utilities via the Vice Chair. I've personally sent an email with a letter to various officials at Tshwane, and I have a copy of the letter right there. I won't bring it up now. We pushed for time. We sent emails to the mayor. We engaged with NAMA. NAMA are backing us on this, and NAMA also have 3,200 complexes that fall under them in the northern Gauteng region, and that is also 150,000 consumers that will be affected by these tariff structural changes. And the only responses we've received to date is from the MMC for Finance. She said to us that she needs to refer it to energy, because energy is the one that is setting the prices. Finance is just implementing it. The Chief of Staff, which I believe sits in the Mayor's office, also came back to us and said they would set up a meeting. But I think ultimately everybody's waiting to see what happens today. All right, and then just an overview. We say KVA does not work for the working class who are bound by 9-to-5 jobs. There will be a financial, we will not be able to, the income will not equal the expense, will be more than the income, sorry. All right, and then also we'd like to see that the tariff schedules don't prescribe what we must charge to end customers. All right, end customers must be described in the tariff schedule once off, and that end customer tariff is applied by the city and the resellers. Right, then lastly, the way forward. We would like to see that the 13.07% that was applied to by Nersa be implemented as a tariff level change. That means you take last year's tariff and you simply add 13.07% to it. All right. And then that will allow Tshwane some time to first engage with all stakeholders over the next year, what will probably be 9 months, regarding the structural changes. We, the resellers, have the data beyond the bulk supply points, and we are willing to share this with the city as we have done in the past. We would also just advise the city to possibly have a look at the city power tariffs. They've done a lot of work there over the years, and their reseller tariffs seem to be working very well. They have a group of consultants that do their tariffs for them. Also, it needs to take into account the number of residential units beyond the bulk supply point. When you look at something like the inclining VOP tariff or basic charges, in the example that I gave of 190 units, you can implement a basic charge, in this case 56 Rand. Then you simply take the 56 Rand and times it by 190, and you charge that on the bulk. But it means going through a registration process. We've done a similar thing at COJ City Power. The resellers, we register the number of units, and then that is applied on the bulk account. All right. Also, we would like to see the cost of supply studies being made available. We've heard a lot said about cost of supply studies today. The cost of supply studies give us transparency. All right. The resellers are supplying electricity for the last mile, and we're taking on the risk in place of the city and supplying a service in place of the city. So the question is, how much are we saving the city for not supplying those 150,000 customers that we are supplying? All right, and then again, tariffs must mirror each other, as is stated a number of times, and the tariffs must be synchronized. Bulk tariffs and end tariffs must all be aligned and synchronized. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor, for the presentation. I would like to give Mr. Tshwane an opportunity to ask questions of clarity.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just a question of clarity. In your presentation, you appear to be in support of some of the structural changes, but in the end, you are saying that the structural changes should not be implemented, but only the tariff levels should be allowed. Maybe if you can just clarify that for me. Also, I didn't hear you talking about the proposed demand charge for resellers. Do you have any views on that as contained in the application? And then lastly, in the absence of a cost of supply study, what is the alternative in your view? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tshwane. Maybe I must also just find out on the introduction of the KVA by the city. Just to understand from your view, what do you think is the reason for the city to introduce that KVA pricing there? What are the costs that they are seeking to recover through that KVA, introduction of the KVA related charge? And then the second thing is the suggestion that you made that the city of Tshwane must first consult with stakeholders for next year, maybe not now, so that stakeholders understand the reason behind the introduction of these changes in the tariff structures. Are you suggesting that since other presenters indicated that this was never consulted with stakeholders, so are you suggesting that perhaps Nersa should not consider these proposed tariff structures by the city of Tshwane, and therefore this is something that the city must look at for next year, where it would have had enough opportunity to engage with stakeholders? Is that what you are suggesting? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, the public participation, I think it looks like our Vice Chair might want to have some input here, Madam Chair. Would this be an appropriate time to swear him in quick?
He may come forward, yes. Right, may you please raise your right hand, sir? Do you solemnly declare that the facts you are going to provide before this panel will be the truth and the whole truth?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Please state your name and your designation at Nersa.
My name is Johan Oakley. I'm the Vice Chairman of Nersa.
All right. Please proceed, sir.
As our Chair mentioned, the structural changes, if you look at the information that is sent from Eskom, it's definitely something that the city needs to look at. But our feeling of it is it wasn't properly consulted with the stakeholders like Nersa, like we did in the previous years. We were very involved on high-level public participation annually, twice a year, and this year we were completely shut out. We sent the various information emails and that, so we feel that the structural changes is needed, but it needs to be done in accordance to the regulation of cost of supply study must first be done to determine what the costs are in order then to put in place the structural changes.
I've got nothing to add to that. I can just confirm that in principle, structural changes are most likely necessary. So we support the principles, but what we're saying is it didn't go through the proper consultation process, in our opinion.
I don't understand. So if you say you support the principle, does it mean the extent of the increases, including all that has been proposed, including the KVAs, including the seasonal tariffs and all those, the way that they are proposed, as a matter of principle you support? The only issue that you have is that you are not informed, you are not taken through the process. Otherwise, that you support?
Madam Chair, no, we support the issue of the methodology behind a basic charge. We understand why the city wants to implement a basic charge, and that is to counteract energy saving, embedded energy and so on and so forth, to maintain the infrastructure and network of the city. We understand that. So from that point, we can see that. However, we definitely do not support the structural change of KVA. And as far as the KVA is concerned, there is another question around that. And I think I should just answer that now. That was the first question from Madam Chair, where she said, you asked whether what do we think the city's reason was behind introducing the KVA. We believe that the reasoning behind introducing KVA on the bulk would be probably to account for the basic charges, because if there are 190 consumers in the building and there's a 56 Rand that the city is charging to each end consumer, then that means we should also charge that 56 Rand. And how does the city recoup that 56 Rand from us? I think they are aiming to do it through the KVA. But as I said previously, there is another method of doing it which is far more accurate. There's simply too much variance between complexes as far as KVA is concerned, and KVA doesn't work on domestic. The third question, the cost of supply.
Madam Chair, in the documents that we also received, we saw that there was a discrepancy between the reseller consumer versus the municipality's consumer, where the fixed charge was higher. And that is also going backwards, where a couple of years ago we spent a lot of time aligning the tariffs that the end consumer in a residential complex pays exactly the same tariff as what the consumer of the city pays. So that is also something that must always be looked at, that those charges are exactly the same and mirror each other.
Right, and then the second question from the Chair regarding the consultation process. Yes, indeed, we feel that the proper consultation process was not followed. Especially in as far as we are concerned, or the resellers are concerned, and as it applies to the KVA demand being implemented on bulk domestic points. So if the city implemented the 13.07 on the existing tariffs, it means they could go back to the drawing board and consult with all the stakeholders on all of the structural changes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor, and Johan for the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam.
And the next presenter is Freedom Front Plus, and for the name of RV Erasmus. Please raise your right hand, sir. Do you solemnly declare that the facts you are going to present before this panel today will be the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please state your full name and your portfolio at the Freedom Fund Plus for the record.
Thank you, Chairperson. My full name is Lawrence Abraham Erasmus, and my nickname being the RV Erasmus. I'm a councillor in the City Council, City of Tshwane Metro Council, and I'm the Deputy Chair for the Victoria Region for the Republic of Plus. Thank you, Chairperson. Ladies and gentlemen, panel members, stakeholders, thank you for this opportunity, and I really look forward in engaging on this very important matter. Just a broad overview of the presentation, about introductions on context, purpose, challenges to be identified, recommendations, and conclusion. To give some context to the matter, electricity tariffs play a fundamental role in the lives of municipalities as well as consumers. Municipalities have come to rely heavily on electricity tariffs as a source of revenue. This, in many cases, creates an over-reliance on these specific tariffs. On the other hand, consumers have seen their disposable income coming under immense pressure due to the struggling economy, and they cannot afford to have continued increases in living costs. Eskom, as the main supplier of electricity in South Africa, has its own structural operational problems, which creates the need for it to increase its tariffs on the provision of the electricity to municipalities. I think maybe that's the elephant in the room to some extent. We need to fix Eskom going forward. Municipalities are necessitated to transfer these increases to consumers. And then lastly, the issue of the tariffs should be concluded by the city as quick as possible as a matter of urgency, seeing that the new financial year has already commenced on the 1st of July 2019. Now, the purpose from our side would be to highlight certain challenges to Nersa and to yourselves on the new structure, because it's not only the tariffs, it's a new structure, to make certain recommendations both in terms of principal matters, but also provide numerical insights in terms of these said principles. On the challenges, we've heard a lot of them today. Proper cost to customers in money analysis was seemingly not done or not properly analyzed, as the structure initially had increases in excess of 70%, and we had the figure mentioned of 400% in some instances. How was the proposed fixed fee for consumers calculated, and what was the reason for this drastic change from the previous year? What research, for example, informed the fixed fee? We are further concerned that the newly proposed fixed fee for agricultural consumers would negatively impact the sector. We also, even with the reduction in the fixed fee to 56 Rand and 230 Rand respectively, that the impact of the fixed fee hasn't properly been researched. The new structure, Madam Chair, imposes higher tariffs for residential consumers residing in complexes. I think that was the previous speaker's main focus. Impacting resellers of electricity. What was the reason for this drastic change? Because, Madam Chair, it was indeed a drastic change. What informed the parameters within the new block system, the two block system? We moved away from the 4 blocks to the 2 blocks. What informed those specific movements? Madam Chair, you'll know that the blocks should allow price-conscious consumers to control their budget in terms of if you consume less, you pay less, if you spend more, if you consume more, then you will pay more. The blocks should protect low and middle-class consumers versus high-income consumers. The blocks should reflect this scenario, which was the case with the previous 4-block structure that I'll show on the next slide. The 0 to 100 kilowatt-hour block was considered to be a major boost for the tourists that were in previous years. And that block has now been removed, it has been scrapped. Eskom has 2 block system, that is correct. But in our opinion, you cannot compare the two Eskom with their consumers, which is a bulk consumer, municipalities and some other large users, with municipality and services, domestic consumers. It's a different animal altogether in terms of consumption levels. I'm just quickly going to show you the previous year and then the new block system. You clearly see there on the top spreadsheet, you'll see the 0 to 100 that was previously used, and then you move over to the new proposed tariff, and you'll see it has completely disappeared, and you now have 0 to 650, and then the 650 and more. So the principle of protecting the purpose of the poor has now vanished to some extent. Then again, what's the proper cost to customer analysis done to establish the impact the new structure would have on different categories of consumers, that's residential, resellers, industrial, as well as agricultural consumers. The FFP Plus is therefore of the opinion that the new proposed structure is not workable at this stage, and the proper research and scenario analysis was not done. And that the new structure will negatively impact normal residential consumers, consumers residing in complexes, as well as agricultural consumers. Moving on, in concluding with recommendations, we would like to recommend the following. That the proposed fixed fee for residential consumers be scrapped. That the proposed fixed fee for agricultural consumers be scrapped. Taking into account the time constraints, as well as the we don't have the cost of supply study hasn't been done and hasn't been submitted, and it can take some time, I believe. We would like to recommend that the previous structure, as approved by Nersa for the previous financial year, be used and adjusted as follows, as a guideline. We move back to the previous structure, and then within the 4 blocks, we'll see 4.5% that's inflation related for the 0 to 100 kilowatt an hour. Moving on to the next block, we've got a CPI then plus 2%, and then we move on to the higher blocks. We move on to the Nersa guideline, the 15.07%. That all residential consumers, including complexes and prepaid consumers, be charged the same tariffs. That the City of Tshwane commenced the process to rework the tariff structure for the next financial year. That should the following should, but is not limited to, as part of this new process for the new financial year. A structure that is sensitive to small consumers, but also taking into account overburdened high-end consumers of electricity. Perform various cost-to-customer scenario analysis. Ensure that the City of Tshwane consists of the required human capital skills to properly dispose of the task. And if not, acquire these skills via consultants or capacitate the relevant departments. And then fourthly, that various stakeholders be consulted throughout the above-mentioned process. In conclusion, FFP Plus humbly requests Nersa to consider the comments and the recommendations. We are willing to assist the department in revising the structure, and that if there is a dire need for a new structure, proper research and stakeholder engagement, as recommended on the previous slide, should take place and be ready for public participation for the next financial year. I thank you, Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rasmus. I think the presentation was much clearer with the clear recommendations. Mr. Tshwane, anything for clarity?
Yeah, maybe just one issue for me, and actually I was hoping that you would provide answers to the questions that you're asking, because those are the very questions that we have. But also seeing that you are a member of council, I just wanted to check. So we have 2 opposing views with respect to the tariff that has been implemented. So the city is saying it has implemented a tariff that was approved by council, but there's a view that says that particular tariff was actually not approved by the council. So I just wanted to hear your views on that. Thank you.
I note all the recommendations that you've made here, which are also in line with what the policy contemplates with regards to the city to perform the cost of supply to consumers and all of that, so that we can better understand the research that we are referring to, so that we can understand how these increases were calculated, how they got to this. I just want to test your reaction, for instance, on this say the drastic changes, like drastic introduction of these things, coupled with some increases that are quite high. Then at the same time, then you will find substantial reductions. Do you think that there is a case here? Because also we are not getting any documents. So if there was this significant increase, all of a sudden there's a drastic reduction, and then you never understand whether in the first place there is a case here for cost that needs to be recovered. I'll give you an example from your own presentation. The slides are not numbered, but you said you further concerned that the newly proposed fixed fee for agricultural consumers, it was 610, the fixed charge. Now it was reduced to 250. So it's a significant reduction in the first place. So how did it get to 250? So what case was there in the first place that justified that amount of 610 that the municipality now brought it down to 250?
Thank you for those questions. Firstly, on the approval of the implementation of those were approved and implemented, I can from council side, from my side as a councillor, I can say that indeed on the 27th of June, the 36 land was approved by council, as well as the 230 land for fixed fee for agricultural users. Now, I think that being said, that was approved by council. Now, what happened then, as you know, the next day, Friday, the Nersa disproved of these proposals. And we're not exactly certain if it was the 250 or 56, but they disagreed with the proposal that came from council. And then logically from our side, is we are in support of Nersa in the sense of we feel it should, the way it should work is that you should make a recommendation, council should reach a conclusion. That should then go to Nersa. Nersa should then approve or disapprove. But you can't guidance from them. It's not override now. That's our position on it. You need to take this into account. So, for example, it seems fact, council approved the 250 and the 56 exam. But that doesn't mean, for us, it's not correct for council, for the city's administration, to then implement. It's two different processes. The one comes before the other, stating how that constitutes that question. And then secondly, I think there is a good question to ask. You've got drastic changes.
What would be the view, or what is the view of the council to the fact that the city went ahead to implement the tariff when there is no regulatory approval?
So, unfortunately, there hasn't been council sitting to test council on that. What happened is we had the council sitting the 27th of June. The next day there was a disapproval, and in the Monday it was the 1st of July. And council hasn't sat again to deliberate on this matter. I believe coming now at the end of the month, last Wednesday of the month, we will definitely deliberate on it. And hopefully we have something we can take to council and we can approve. But council hasn't been tested on that specific instance.
Since council held a special meeting, also particularly because of these concerns around the tariffs. You will recall that there was a meeting of the 30th of May. We were informed that there was another meeting held in June. I'm not sure if it was the 27th of June. There's a special meeting. So seeing that this has been a serious matter, and the council had to sit on an emergency basis to deal with this matter. Now with all this information out there, and the city getting coverage regarding implementation of the tariff that has not been approved by the regulator, is that not a concern to the council, for the council to convene on an urgency basis, but also for the council to look into what the city is going to implement, given that there is no tariff that has been approved? Is that not a concern? And what plans do you think or measures that should have been considered by the council to really speed up this matter and cooperate and make sure that there is a tariff that is approved in time so that we don't go too far into the month.
Absolutely, I think that is a major concern. It should be a major concern to the council. Madam Chair, just to clarify, in the meeting of the 27th of June, was an ordinary council meeting, but the report that was brought to the council is a special report. It has a special report. It was an ordinary council setting. It wasn't specifically convened for the parish. It was an ordinary council meeting. Last Thursday each month, we've got an ordinary council meeting. A special meeting has not yet been convened. I would think from council side that they need to be tested on this, and this needs to be brought to the national council to come to the decision. Then moving on to the next question regarding the drastic changes. We saw some increases of tariffs going up drastically, and there were some coming down. So it can potentially be a case to say, but you've got these, at the end of the day, you've got something that is actually acceptable. We don't agree with the notion. We believe that working with tariffs, it should be a stable process. Investors in particular, they don't want to see a stable situation. They don't want to see stable increases. They don't want to see CPI increases. But they don't want to see large structural changes without proper consultation, without being properly thought through. And in our opinion, as is the case today, many of the inputs have seen that there's questions being asked on these figures. How was it informed, etc. So I would not, I would say from our side, it is important that we keep to a stable type of increase. Let's not do these drastic things. If we do that, it can be limited, of course it can be limited, but then there needs to be a proper process that needs to be followed, and also stakeholders need to be consulted.
There was a question from one of the stakeholders earlier on, seeing that there is no tariff that is approved at this stage. And there was a question as to whether the city of Tshwane would then approve the National Treasury to seek exemption. Otherwise, how is it going to implement the tariff if, for instance, you get the decision, whatever the decision is, it will impact on the budget, number one, and maybe that the decision obviously must be implemented on the day of the decision of the regulator, going forward, not backwards. So it doesn't correct the conduct, the previous conduct. Given that, what is your view on this issue of exemption, taking into account your processes? But also, I want to check if it was put as a councillor, whether you have put before the council your concerns around the introduction of these fixed charges and or the restructuring of the tariffs and the basis for this. Was it ever discussed before the council, and what was the view of the council for introducing all of these things without the cost of supply, without compliance with the electricity pricing policy, and also given the fact that stakeholders are saying, as we heard them earlier, that there was no meaningful or adequate consultation on this tariff restructuring with the people that will be affected.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In terms of the exemption with Treasury, if I understand you correctly, at this stage, we can resolve it. We've had some engagement, we need to engage more. And coming from this meeting, we need to engage all stakeholders. It shouldn't be necessary to get exemptions, if I understand the question correctly. From Treasury, let's use the proper channels. Let's talk to the different stakeholders. Let's talk to the regulator. And let's work together to get to a solution. There are two sides of the story. We do understand that. We won't be powerless to say, no, don't increase tariffs. That's not viable. We don't want to, that's not our position. But if we do it, then let's do it properly. And then, On council's role, unfortunately, council hasn't been formally informed to my knowledge. Council has said beginning from the 27th of June. From our side, as a council, what we did is we engaged the political leadership. That's when we moved, we talked to the political leadership, we talked to the executive mayor, as well as the MEC for utilities. We had engagements, and we had some good engagements. Before the meeting of the 27th of June, we had a caucus meeting, multi-party caucus meeting, and then we discussed to establish a task team to look into these new tariffs. And the task team sat with some of the members of the administration, and then it was decided that this needs to be connected. What we have now currently approved is not correct. We need to go back to the public consultation, the figures that we mentioned there. And then the 27th of June came and we approved those specific tariffs.
Thank you very much for that clarification. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. The next presenter is Mr. Chris van der Hout from CWKZN, Professional Consulting Engineering. Mr. van der Hout. Mr. van der Hout, you are not supposed to say anything until I allow you. Can you please raise your right hand and you solemnly declare that the information and the evidence you're going to provide before this panel today will be the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Alright, please state your full name and your designation as CWA Professional Consulting Engineer.
Christoffel Philippus Petrus van der Hout, electrical engineer.
Alright, thank you very much. You may proceed and with your presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam, we submitted a model for domestic bulk tariffs. We believe that's where the biggest problem is. And therefore, there's a couple of items which we can vary. Number of stands, number of units per month, and then also the maximum demand, to give you an indication. And we've compared it for both financial years.